Ever pondered on how rock and roll became the soundtrack of a generation? Let's take a musical journey back in time to the 40s and 50s. This was a time when the rhythm of African American blues, the soulful melodies of rhythm and blues, and the raw energy of country music began to intertwine. This beautiful fusion of genres was the beginning of something unique, something rebellious, something that would change the course of music forever. In the midst of this sonic revolution, key figures emerged, each adding their own flavor to the mix. Chuck Berry with his electrifying guitar riffs, Little Richard with his flamboyant performances, and Elvis Presley, the king himself, with his blend of blues and country, all played pivotal roles. They took these distinct musical styles, infused them with their own creative flair, and created a genre that was more than a mere form of entertainment. Thus, a new sound, a new rhythm, a new experience, rock and roll was born. Rock and roll's golden era was not just about music, it was about breaking boundaries. This was a time when the British invasion, led by the likes of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, transformed and popularized rock on a global scale. These bands took the world by storm, their music resonating with millions, and their influence echoing across continents. But the golden era was also a period of diversification. The 70s saw the birth of progressive rock, hard rock, and the genesis of heavy metal. Bands like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd pushed the envelope, experimenting with new sounds and creating a rich tapestry of sonic experiences. Black Sabbath, with their heavier, darker sound, gave birth to a whole new genre, heavy metal, which would go on to have a massive impact on the rock scene. The 70s were a time of exploration and expansion, where rock music found its many voices. As the 70s ended, rock was ready to shake the world again. A new wave of rebellion was brewing, and it was called punk rock. This was a raw, gritty response to the perceived excesses of mainstream rock. Bands like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols were at the forefront of this revolution, providing a stark contrast to the polished sounds that dominated the airwaves. Their music was loud, aggressive, and deliberately confrontational, challenging the status quo and forever changing the landscape of the genre. Then, as the 80s rolled in, rock music found its way into every living room, thanks to the advent of MTV. This was the era when rock dominated the charts, with artists pushing boundaries and blurring the lines between rock and pop. It was a time of larger-than-life music videos, anthemic choruses, and iconic guitar solos. Rock had not just entered the mainstream, it was the mainstream. The 90s was a time of rebellion and redefinition for rock music. This era saw the rise of alternative rock and grunge, genres that stood in stark contrast to the polished sound of mainstream rock. These new forms of rock were raw, introspective, and emotionally charged, echoing the sentiments of a generation yearning for authenticity. The city of Seattle became the epicenter of this musical revolution, birthing bands that would go on to leave an indelible mark on the rock landscape. Bands like Nirvana, with their groundbreaking album Nevermind, and Pearl Jam, with their monumental debut 10, took the world by storm. Their music spoke to the disenchanted, the outcasts, the ones who dared to challenge the status quo. With their distorted guitars, introspective lyrics, and unabashed disregard for convention, these bands redefined what rock could be. The 90s proved that rock was not a genre, but an attitude. As we entered the new millennium, rock continued to reinvent itself. Despite facing formidable competition from pop, hip-hop, and electronic music, rock found ways to evolve, to keep pushing boundaries. One of the key drivers of this evolution was the internet, which democratized music distribution and brought rock to every corner of the globe. In the digital age, rock's rebellious spirit found a new playground. Musicians began using digital platforms to experiment with their sound, incorporate elements from other genres, and connect with their fans in a way that was never possible before. Websites like MySpace, YouTube, and SoundCloud became launchpads for aspiring rock bands, while streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music made rock, in all its diverse forms, accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Rock and roll, not just music but a cultural revolution, continues to shape our fashion, language, and lifestyle even today.